us what the book is about.
Well, 33 Days is it's a I guess you call it a memoir. It's about my band's Divine Week's first tour in 1987 in a van, just five guys, first time out on their own, and breaking away from home and culture and sort of difficult upbringings, trying to leave the baggage behind. And we all go out there, sort of following the breadcrumbs left on the highway, by these indie bands that were like teachers to us, bands like Black Flag and Minutemen and Husker Du and Sonic Youth. And it's a coming of age story, basically, for lack of a better term. It's a band on the road, but at the same time, it's the first time out on our own at all. So it's really kind of a journey. There's nothing like that 22-year-old voice. I mean, there was a lot of other bigger adventures probably, for us. But that first tour, like anything, the first time out of your home, breaking free. I mean, there's nothing like that voice. That's that mix of, bravado, hiding sheer terror.
I want to go back just for a second, touch on that DIY spirit that you mentioned. Was that the catalyst really for the tour?
Well, I mean, we had been gigging around for a few years, and certainly when I started the band, you could say I kind of had grown fed up with rock stars. I mean, I loved all those bands, The Who, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, whatever. But there was a point when I started going to big concerts where, and at the same time I had started making music myself. And, I felt a disconnect finally when I was making music. And these bands, although I still like the music, it was kind of soaring over my head. It was kind of like you'd sit in the arena and they weren't speaking to any individuals anymore. Or at least that was the way I felt. It was like flying to the back of the room. And I just started to be drawn to, these bands I could go see and talk to and, just hear about adventures that felt more touchable. And so like I said, it's like, Black Flag pretty much invented it. And although Divine Weeks is not really a punk band, we were certainly drawn to that spirit, of do it yourself, just get in the van. And there, like I said, it was kind of like this, there's like this nobility or something mystical about, heading into the hinterlands, looking for converts one at a time. That just seemed to touch me, and that was sort of the galvanizing or, watershed moment.
I want to talk some more about what the LA music scene was at that time, because I want to take people back and kind of set the stage. But I wanted to have you introduce the band to us first before we go much farther.
Sure. Well, there's me. I sang and, probably wore a guitar more than played it. Yeah. And, our guitarist was Rajesh, and he plays a huge part in the book. He's of Indian descent, and, his story and mine and our friendship is kind of the crux of the book. George, the bass player, sort of larger than life figure, he is the one who's dealing with the most conflict on this tour, in that unlike the rest of us, we had sort of washed our hands of school, and we're like, okay, we're all in. And although he believed in it as much as anyone, he was like a brilliant student, and he was on his way to grad school. And so he's facing these big life decisions. Can I commit to the band fully? Do I do this? Do I become a professor? And it was all this other stuff. And then Dave is the drummer, and Dave is, he's the only one who'd kind of been on his own for a couple of years, and he'd sort of lived the hard life. And so he's the very pragmatic member of the band who, while the rest of us are packing, tapes to listen to and books to read and whatever, he's the one packing, emergency flares and a toolbox,
You always need one of those guys. And the fifth guy, not in the band, but in the van, is Ian as well.
Oh, and Ian is our road manager, and he's a life lover, and he keeps us on course pretty much.
Yeah, that's great. So let's set the stage there with that LA music scene at the time, and where you guys fit in. And Jane's addiction is mentioned quite a bit in the book, so I want you to mention that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ironically now again, as you say, to set it up in the time. This is summer of 1987. Jane's had not yet put out a record yet, but their arrival on the scene kind of completely blew up everything. And like they had people coming to their shows like Flea and um, Anthony of Red Hot Chili Peppers, literally going, "We just got to change everything." It was kind of like, I mean, it was a big moment in LA, because you always had your underground folkies, and then you had your metal heads, and this is the first band that came along and kind of brought everyone to the same show, and so they're part of the book because their arrival set these shockwaves through Los Angeles, and we had done well modestly, and we got signed to a label, and we got some good press and all, but it was their arrival and our departure on our tour at the same time that kind of made everyone kind of question their approach, and everyone had to kind of look and aim higher. And so they caused this sort of conflict, even though they haven't put out a record yet. We're on tour, and George's girlfriend is sending him live tapes of them around town. And so we're out there doing what we're supposed to be doing, but at home there's like this big rumbling going on. So it's kind of interesting in that sense.
Yeah, very. And in fact, before you leave on the tour, just for the heck of it, you have to have one last great Spinal Tap moment.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's sort of a funny scene. We had needed some money, a last bit of a last payday to try and get our record out that we put out ourselves. And so we had this offer to play the zoo, which is, I mean, literally, it's like Spinal Tap playing Six Flags. I mean, people will ask you, who opened for you at a gig or something. Well, a bug show opened for us. I mean, it's literally, just comical. And we dealt with this very officious zoo official, who's waving his arms and trying to get us to play, as soft as possible. For what reason? Well, it was because the matriarch elephant of the LA Zoo, Louise, was disturbed by the noise. So, it's this very, farcical scene. But and I think that's, people remind me, for all these big themes that I deal with in this book, it's actually, there's a lot of humor. And of course, like the old MASH, you use humor to deflect, some of the bigger things that are coming at you. And so that humor was a big thing, for how we sort of dealt with, these new things that were coming at us and that seemed, overwhelming.
What's worse, a Roadhouse full of drunken frat boys or a temperamental elephant?
Very difficult to say. I mean, we had a lot of strange stuff go on that tour.
Yeah, I would love if you would share one of your favorite highlights from the road.
Well, there's a couple come to mind. I mean, like, again, to set it in its proper perspective, this was 1987. Ronald Reagan is in office. It's morning again in America, or so he said, and we're on kind of a different grid. We're we're not on track, for the two Beamers in the driveway, and all that. And so we have this weekend in Seattle. We're waiting for our Canadian work visas to come through. And so we have to spend a couple extra days in Seattle, and we stay with Ian's cousins, who are, these two yuppies, who are just straight from central casting. And it's a funny sort of couple days in the book, but at the same time, it really shows kind of like the divide or the chasm, between where we are and where what felt like the rest of the country was charging towards. And there's this sort of, kind of a showdown, at this barbecue that they throw for us, and they're kind of challenging us in saying stuff like, what will happen if you don't make it, and basically we're saying we're really more concerned with not trying, and they're saying like, well, we're on our way. We'll be retired by the time we're 40, and we're like, we feel reborn out here. The idea of retirement is like, it's unheard of to us. We're reborn. We're ready to go out and swallow the whole world, and all they can talk about is their portfolios, and diversifying and all this other stuff. So it's a funny scene, but at the same time, it's very poignant, and speaks very much to kind of what justified, or to us felt like we're totally justified in leaving everything behind and doing this.
When you come home off of this big high and have to come back to reality, what happens?
We have this homecoming gig in town, and it's a big event. I mean, we sell it out, and it's a big moment. But at the same time, I thought to myself, well, this is a good spot. We'll leave the story right here and let the reader decide for themselves. I mean, ultimately, I added a couple epilogues to kind of sort of explain what happened.
Where's everybody today?
Well, Raj was with me just the other day. We had a book release event at Book Soup here in Los Angeles, and we played some old songs, and he's very instrumental in the website, 33daysthebook.com, plug.
You might as well.
And he designed the book cover, so he and I are still very close. Ironically, George, who was facing the big decision of whether to go to grad school and on to professorship, is actually a professor at Dartmouth now. So he's a real rock star, but of the classroom. Ian is a high school teacher up north. And Dave he's close by. I still talk to him.
It's a wonderful book, 33 Days.
Oh, thanks so much. Appreciate it.